Hi and welcome to this quick tutorial on editing the inside of Manchester Cathedral. I thought I'd show you this one because it's an example of an architecture shot, an interior, which most people would probably do HDR, or, well, it's a definite candidate for HDR because you've got these dark areas around here under the arches and you've got a little bit of burnout going on in the windows. If you look at the histogram up here, let's see if we can make that a bit bigger. Oops. There you go. You can see there's a little bit of clipping on that side. If we put our mouse over the little arrow there, it comes up in blue. You can see those little blue spots. So take it away, put it back. So there's a little bit of black clipping and there's a little bit of highlights as well. If you're getting that, it's probably not one which you have to worry too much in HDR about. I mean, you could definitely... There we go, it's a bit bigger. You could definitely do a HDR on this, but if you're just killing a few hours and walking around like I was in between jobs, a simple shot like this could do. So let's have a look at what was on. It was an ISO 1600, 24mm, f4, and a 40th of a second, using a 24 to 17mm stabilized lens. Anyway, so first thing to do really is just to play with the highlights and see what happens to these bright bits. So if we bring this down, you can see when we get to a certain point, all this is gone a bit dull here, and they look a little bit dull. You've got to think about it. When you look at something bright, you'd expect it to be pretty bright. That's the whole idea of a bright spot. So if we just bring it down a little bit so it doesn't look too burnt out. If you look at the histogram, it's below there now. Nothing's really burnt out. If you go too far, they look fake. I guess that's the point I'm trying to make. And now we can sort of simulate what HDR does by bringing up the highlights. Now, if you did this with an older camera and zoomed in at ISO 1600, maybe even the original 5D Mark I, this would be unacceptably noisy. It would look like a jigsaw puzzle. But with certainly with a 5D3, which this was shot with, or with a 5D2 or Nikon equivalents, I'm sure, you can raise these shadows quite a lot before they start looking noisy. It's only when you get these really black points where you're trying to put light back into somewhere it's perfect with black that it doesn't work. So you can do that. And now what I would tend to do is press the Alt key down, get all the blacks, and you can add black in, and you can see where wherever it's going yellow, red, and then black, that's going to be completely clipped black. So this is just adding a bit of contrast into it, really. I think realistically we didn't need to do anything there because the blacks were looking cool. So try the whites. So if we move the whites up a little bit, you can see it's starting to brighten up those highlights a little bit. So on this shot, that's pretty much all I do with the levels. And now let's maybe just add a little bit of contrast in. There we go. If you're a clarity type, you can add some clarity and give it a little bit of punch, or you can go nice and soft if you prefer by taking the clarity down. Maybe between minus and plus 40 looks fairly natural. Any further, you start getting into like wishy-washy tones or mega sharp. So let's just go. I'm going to go for a fairly average 30-ish. There's some lovely colours here, look, so I might up the vibrance a little bit just to make the most of those. Okay, so let's zoom back out. So white balance wise, always tricky these because you've got daylight coming in through the windows, which is one colour, temperature, and then inside you have tungsten light usually, which is a lot warmer, so you get a little blue-yellow conflict. So I'm going to find something I know to be white, which is probably this candle. Click on that and see what happens. Right, so you can see what's happened there. It's gone really, really blue. So we don't want that, do we? So let's go back to as shot and maybe just try daylight. I can't remember what it was shot on. So the light coming in does seem quite natural there. So next is probably, it's a little bit skewy, a little bit converging, so let's skip the rest of the controls for now and just head down to the lens corrections area. I always click on enable profile and remove chromatic aberrations, just to get rid of all the distortions that lenses naturally have. And click on auto and just see what it does. Wow. Okay. So that's not done a good job. So fear not. So the little trick for architecture shots is to go up to your crop tool and find the angle. Find something you know to be central near the middle. Oops, I've not quite clicked on that in the right place. So I'm just going to press escape to cancel that. I'm going to press on angle again. More carefully. I'm using a pen here, so it can be a bit tricky. So I'm just going to draw straight down all the things I can see are central. So as I'm looking, I'm going to this point here. Can you see the bottom of that? The cool things about cathedrals, they do tend to be pretty symmetrical. So that's rotated it, so we know the middle is now vertical, so we can hit done. And now, because the auto seems to be a bit messy, I'm going to go to manual here and click on the vertical. And for once in my life, I'm going the right way first, so I usually go the wrong way. So you can see how now that's doing a better job, isn't it? And it's popped up these guidelines, so you can just about see that the guidelines on the left and right are following the arches, so the lines are going up and down here. Follow that. So I'm pretty happy now that that's vertical enough. It might be a little bit leany. I mean, if you look at that, I don't know if that's going down a little bit on that side, but the main thing, that's quite horizontal. So we need to crop away the bottom bits. You can do a constrain crop if you want to, but I always find that doing my own crops probably more, I just get better results. So let's just pull this over. I might just keep that flagging over there. I want to keep the bottom of the altarpiece in as well. So I've dragged the bottom left to there, and now let's get the top right. The reason I do bottom left and top right is because you only need to do those two things if you do it that way. If you start doing different bottom left, bottom right, you have to sort out the top. So notice what I've done here. I've dragged it across. We've got half a bloke in there, which isn't perfect. But the thing to notice is I've dragged it so this handle is right in the middle, which means that the centre of the picture is the centre of the photo. So there we go, we've got a nice start point there. So we can maybe zoom in a little bit, maybe add a bit of sharpening. If you press the Alt key and drag the masking along, all the black bits don't get sharpened, all the white bits do get sharpened. So bits like the centre of these blocks here, they don't really need sharpening because there's nothing to sharpen there. Now there is a little bit of noise in it, so let's just add a little bit of noise reduction, just to get rid of any unwanted grain really. Maybe a little bit more detail. Okay, we can click on it to zoom back out again. Right, so I think what I want to do is draw the eye to the centre of the shot and maybe take away these people, and the way I like doing that is to do a vignette. Not a massive one, don't want to be too obvious, just you don't want to see big black borders or anything, but you see how it, just doing that, maybe add a bit of feather to lessen the effect. So adding it about maybe 40-50 on a shot like this gives a nice sort of darkness, but it doesn't, I mean, well, I'll show you what 100 looks like. It just looks, you know, so much darker on the sides than in the middle, it looks fake. So, but if you keep it down to between 20 and 40, you should be okay. Notice you can change how big the effect is. If you go from a little midpoint, it's like looking down a tunnel. You know, but if you have a big feather and a smaller midpoint, you get a lovely fade. So already we've gone quite nicely there. So what we can next do, if you want to do a little bit of selective editing, is go to our pen tool, and let's say we just want to, there we go, that's the pen tool, you can see it there. We want to maybe up the highlights, so let's go to highlights and sharpness on this alter, I guess it is, isn't it? So we just quickly have a draw over it. Oh, that doesn't look to be doing much at the minute, does it? So just double check by clicking the show overlay to see where it went. So I missed a bit there. Click off. Now what we can do, if you wanted to, we can just tweak away these bits. Maybe a contrast. Want the dark bits to stay dark. Just bring those highlights up a little bit. So quite like that. Just see what it looked like before. Quite dark and after with this little toggle switch here. So once you're happy, click new to do another one. So if we wanted something, maybe brighten this bit of ceiling up here. So let's make the brush a bit bigger. Notice I haven't got the flow on full here, so you can just paint and add it on gradually rather than chucking the getting it all going on at once. Gives you a bit more control over the edit. There we go. And you might want to do the same on these sides here. See what it's doing, just bringing out that detail, make the brush a bit smaller so we can fit in that gap and this gap. Cool. Maybe let's bring that flag up a little bit, and then anything else. What's it going to do to these? Oh yeah, look at that, it's brightening up these garlands quite nicely. I'm not sure what the festival was, it was April time, so see how it's brightening those up nicely. Okay, so that's, you know, a very quick sort of edit in Lightroom. I suppose you could drag it into Photoshop if you wanted to start adding some Viveza or Nick silver effects to make a nice black and white. But once you're done and you're happy, I mean, the good thing about Lightroom is you can always play a little bit, you know. I mean, I think that looks quite cool, but if you brought the exposure down like this, you could bring the whites up. You can get these really dramatic shots, and see the effect of painting on the highlights before is retained. But I quite like it as we had it to begin with. So let's put it back to 0-ish. Bring those whites back down again, and there you go. So it's a sort of HDR effect, and we've been able to do it because noise in these deep areas and in the highlights has been controlled a lot more. There's more dynamic range in your camera, so you don't always have to take HDR, though I tend to. Right, thanks for watching.